Hey everybody, I just wanted to say thanks for joining me for this video. It's going to be talking about my greatest reads of 2024, what I've loved, and there will be a few honorable mentions on this list as well. So, first up is The Autumn Kingdom by Cullen Bunn and Christopher Mitten. And it's a story of two daughters who go with their father and mother on a trip to a writer's cabin. And their father is a writer, and he's trying to start work on his next big project. So they go for a family vacation. And then all of a sudden, the mother and father are kidnapped by people from this place called the Autumn Kingdom. And what's interesting is these are the characters that their father has thought up. So they've been sucked into their own father's video game world, for lack of a better reference. And they have to find their mother and their father. The Autumn Kingdom is kind of a world that's on the edge of destruction, the eve of destruction, if you will. And so that's why it's called the Autumn Kingdom, is because its time is ending. And it's one of those heartfelt stories where you see the kids save the parents as much as the parents save the children. They learn from one another. The sisters protect each other. And though they don't know everything about this world, and it still can throw them a few curveballs, they also tend to learn more and more about family and the ties that bind. And so it's a really great story by Cullen Bunn and Christopher Mitten. It's only a 4-issue mini, and actually the newest issue is supposed to be coming out this week. So I look forward to seeing how this, if it's the first volume, finishes up. If not, it's still one of my best books and top picks for 2024. The second book is Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees by Patrick Horvath. That was a miniseries as well, where we see anthropomorphic bears and animals living one, next to each other as a community. And one of the first characters that you meet is a bear named Sam. And you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a cute little story. Kind of looks like it's watercolored paints for kids. Not so much. Not so much. You quickly learn that Sam is hiding a dark secret, and she has to go out of town in order to keep that secret. But not everybody else tends to follow the rules that she set up for herself, and she finds herself in trouble with the law. And as it goes on, you learn that she's not stone cold. She does have feelings and emotions, and she has love for people and respect for people. She's not just a lawless, bear going out there and doing whatever. There's reasons behind what she does. And more importantly, she's set up her own rules, kind of like Dexter. And she set up her own rules that she follows in order to keep from getting caught. So if you hadn't had a chance to check that out, it should be out both in trade paperback and probably hardcover too, if I'm correct. And that's from Image Comics. Or no, that's, was that an IDW book, I believe? So anyway, check that out. It's one of the most interesting things. It just starts off real simple, and by the end of the first issue, you realize, oh, I'm in for a wild ride. All right, the third book I want to talk about, and my third pick for this year, is Blood Brothers Mother by the team of Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso. This is a distillery book, so a lot of people probably haven't picked it up because distillery books are more expensive. They are harder to store unless you have bookshelf space for them. And a lot of people just don't like that format. It's not quite a magazine format. It's a little bit longer, I think, than a magazine bag and board. So as you go through there, you have to try to figure out, how am I going to store these things? But anyway, Blood Brothers' mother starts off as a Western, and there are some kids, and their stepfather is a preacher, and all of a sudden some bandits come through and abduct their mother. And they swear vengeance on these bandits. We're going to get our mother back. If it takes us the rest of our lives, we will get our mother back. The catch is that their mother is not the saintly creature that they want to believe that she is, and she's got a history with said bandits from her past. So they're going after somebody who might not want to be saved. So the artwork by Eduardo Rizzo is full of energy, and it's just jam-packed full of action. You get to see all of these emotions, familial connections, the fact that their stepfather did love them, even though he was one of the, bully pulpit preachers. But it's a compelling story. It's absolutely amazing, and that's why it ended up on this list. All right. Next up, we have Conan, written by Jim Zub, with art by Roberto De La Torre, Doug Braithwaite, and now Danica Bryan has stepped on the title as the newest artist in this mix. It brings Robert E. Howard's character of Conan to life. Okay, we have all seen the original Conan movies from the 80s with Arnold Schwarzenegger playing the titular character. This adds so much more backstory and depth to that character than those movies, or I guess the previous stuff from Marvel also added some flair to the character, but it's like Jim has actually kind of conjured the spirit of Robert E. Howard and knows exactly where he would have gone with this character had he still been alive, and it's just absolutely amazing stuff. It's not made for kids. It shows a lot of TNA, but it's not gratuitous. It's just natural. So thank you, Titan. I've said this in previous videos. Thank you for bringing that license, and thank you for bringing Jim Zub and company on board. If you like sword and sorcery stuff, whether it be Dungeons and Dragons, or if you've read a bunch of the Marvel Conan series, I think you will not be disappointed in picking this up. All right, next up is Damaged People by Damian Conley. And this is a 4-issue miniseries from Alien Books, and Damian did the writing and the artwork. It's got a very graphite pencil, sketchy type style to it, which I really enjoy. It's realistic. If it were to be painted, it would probably be even more gorgeous than it already is. Hint, hint, wink, wink, Damian, for Volume 2. But you have the different stories in each issue. For example, the first story is a story about a girl named Abigail who meets a ghost named Mary in this abandoned house. And she has to do a job for Mary because Mary asked her to, hey, can you get this message out to such and such character? So it provides Abigail with a kind of mission for life, whereas she was aimless before. Next up, you've got Jessica, who collects bugs out in the woods, and she runs into a homeless man named Joseph. And if you've ever seen the movie A History of Violence, you'll kind of know where this is going to head. He's more than meets the eye, but at the same time, he's tried to move on and get past that life. But when a bunch of hoodlums attack Jessica in the forest one day, then Joseph comes to her aid and protects her and kind of brings that old spirit back to life. The third issue is Dylan, who is a poet, and he meets Iris. And he falls in love with Iris, and he wants to live forever. And he wants Iris, who is a vampire, to turn him. She refuses for the longest time because she knows what this life is, and she knows exactly how long forever is. And she doesn't want to burden him with that. And last but not least, you have Roman, who goes out dancing one night and he meets Alex. He ends up going back to Alex's apartment a couple days later just to, figure out is this going to be a thing? Is it not going to be a thing? And he shows up. He's talking to Alex. All of a sudden, Alex says, hey, dude, you got to go. And turns out that it is Alex's crazy ex-girlfriend who goes and murders him. And so at the end of it, you don't really know what could have been, what might have been. But the book is Damaged People, and it does delve into tragic / very, very sadly detailed situations that will really tear at your heart and make you think about the way that you act, how you treat the people you love, and just makes you try to be a better person so that we realize we're all damaged people, but we also realize we can do better. All right, next up we have Feral, written by Tony Fleeks with art by Tris Forster and Tone Rodriguez. This is an animated Walking Dead with cats. That's really all I need to say about that, I think. And when I mean Walking Dead, I don't mean issue 180 Walking Dead. I mean issue 10 Walking Dead, where Robert Kirkman and Charlie Adler were on the very, very, very top of their game. And this just, it's supposedly an ongoing, so it's a never-ending story about a viral outbreak, rabies, in this case. And that allows these cats to escape their home. But then they're captured and now they're on the run. So if you're an animal lover, it's very heartbreaking, but at the same time, it will provide an excellent, excellent story at the end. Next up, we've got Green Lantern by Jeremy Adams, Zermanico on art sometimes, and Fernando Pasarin on art other times. This is, in my opinion, the second best Green Lantern run behind Jeff Johns, where Jeff Johns was building up the space cop and the space opera part of Green Lantern. That's exactly what Jeremy Adams has gone for as well. And the story in the last issue just exploded. It was everything that Jeremy Adams had been building up to over the last 18 months. And it's exciting. It just pulls you in because Hal, being a test pilot, Hal is one of the few characters at DC that I've actually can relate to. A lot of characters like Superman's great. Superman was the first. But I have a hard time relating to Clark Kent because of trying to keep the alien and the human separate. On the other hand, anybody can understand a test pilot, and anybody who's seen Top Gun, they're like, hey, I'd love to do that. That looks fun. So Hal is kind of the embodiment of that, and he really, Jeremy Adams seems to get his voice. And as well, you've got Guy Gardner, you've got Jon Stewart. You have this massive eclectic cast of characters that provide that space opera that really, I think it goes back to the origins of Spider-Man and what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko did with Spider-Man. Hal is, to me, as relatable a character as that. So if you like that sort of thing and you like all-out action and you do like superheroes, then that's why this is on that list. The Sacrificers by Rick Remender, Max Famara, and Andre Lima Arahu. This is the story of Pigeon. Pigeon was to be sacrificed to the gods so that they could maintain their way of living and their control and order. Pigeon chose violence. He chose, I don't want to be a sacrifice. I don't want to give my life for something that I don't believe in. And now he has, in the newest issues, has gotten some superpowers of his own so he can actually fight back. It's a story about family. It's a story about trust. It's a story about growing up and finding your own way in life. That made it one of my favorite books. And it just seems to get stronger and stronger with every single issue. All right, next up we've got Transformers by Daniel Warren Johnson Jorge Corona and Jason Howard doing the last 2 issues before Jorge Corona came back. This is what Michael Bay's Transformer movies should have been. It is style, but it has substance as well. Daniel Warren Johnson brings heart to Optimus Prime and company and shows the utter villainy and just hatred of the Decepticons. Starscream hates flesh creatures. He hates his fellow Decepticons. He hates the Autobots. But you did get 2 issues in here that kind of give a backstory so that you can sympathize ever so slightly with Starscream about where he's been and why he became the bot that he is. But Daniel Warren Johnson is doing magical work here, and unfortunately he's off the book in, I believe, 9 months. So I've really enjoyed this, and we'll just have to wait and see what 2025 brings and see if I stick with the book after DWJ leaves. And the last actual book on my list is Universal Monsters Dracula by James Tynion IV and Martin Simmons. This is not a retelling of the Universal Monsters Dracula movie. This is actually an addition. It's kind of like a behind-the-scenes story that shows you what's happening with Renfield. So it's not really told from the perspective of Dracula like the movie is, or Jonathan Harker. It's actually told from Renfield. So you see his motivations. You see how really tied in he is with his master, Dracula. And the artwork from Martin Simmons is absolutely gorgeous. Just knockdown, drag out, beautiful stuff. Reminded me of Gene Colan a lot. I could see that if Gentleman Gene was still alive, that they would have tapped him, or at least tried to tap him, to have been the artistic mastermind behind this. And I can tell you that Martin Simmons does a hell of a job. So that is why it is the last of my top of 2024 books. Now, I said at the beginning of the video that we were also going to have some honorable mentions, so we'll talk about them as well. The first honorable mention is Grommets by Rick Remender and art by Brett Parsons. This is a slice of life book that talks about 1970s and 1980s kids growing up. You've got skater boys, you've got smoking pot behind the local 7-Eleven. You've got, teenage angst and trying to figure out who you are and at that age. You've got jocks versus the wimps, and a little bit of everything in between. So if you grew up in a certain time between the late 70s and the mid 80s, then this book was definitely hit the spot for you, and that's why it ended up on my list. Next up is Spider-Man Reign 2 by Carrie Andrews. It's the sequel to Reign, and it picks up a couple years later. Peter has been locked inside the web by the Kingpin, and he breaks free and decides to go save Mary Jane, but he realizes that maybe that's not what his task is at the end of the day. Carrie Andrews really channels McFarlane in some of these panels and some of these covers, so I love that stuff. That's what I grew up on in the 90s. That's where I started my run on Spider-Man, was with Torment from Spidey 1 through 5 in 1990. Absolutely amazing stuff. Amazing. So with Carrie Andrews pulling that off and then just bringing a better story, much better story than Zeb Wells had going on with Amazing at that point, then it definitely was a strong contender. I had a hard time not putting it on the list, but some of those other books were just that much better. All right, next up is Tin Can Society, once again written by Rick Remender with an assist by Peter Warren and an art by Francesco Mobili. Here we have an Iron Man type character that went off and did something bad. And somebody went back and did something bad to him permanently in response. So he's got a group of friends that they all grew up together in elementary school and / high school, and is one of his friends the murderer is really the question that's going through this entire series. Who finished this guy off? He had a degenerative disease of his legs, so he created this armor because he was a genius. And when he created the armor to make him be able to be mobile with his legs, then he went ahead and created an entire super suit, pretty much like a homemade Iron Man suit. But it didn't save him in the end. So, it's kind of like Clue. Who did it? Was it Colonel Mustard in the library with a knife? And I'm really invested. It's a 9-issue miniseries from Image, and it's the second to last on this list. So if you didn't get a chance to read it this year, I would highly, highly recommend that you do. Next to last is Ultimate X-Men by Peach Momoko. This is totally different than any kind of X-Men book that you would pick up from the Marvel 616 universe. This is a coming-of-age story where we still have the Shadow King. We still have a few elements that make this X-Men-like, but there's no Charles Xavier. There is no mansion in Westchester. This is kids growing up in high school, learning that they're mutants, learning that they have these powers, and learning how to deal with those powers, learning how to build themselves into something bigger and better. And then, of course, you've got antagonists like the Shadow King that are out there that are trying to manipulate in a negative sort of light. And on the other hand, you've got Maystorm and other characters, Armor, that are trying to become these X-Men. All right, and the last book up is Void Rivals by Robert Kirkman with art by Lorenzo De Felici. This is another one of the Energon Universe books. It ties in roughly with Transformers and possibly G.I. Joe as we go along, now that they finally launched the G.I. Joe that was separate from the Larry Hama book. And this is about two warring factions who come to find out that they're not as different as they seem. And when these two characters finally take their masks off, then they're shocked to realize how similar they are. This builds relationship, almost a love story, but it's set in deep space with a lot of political intrigue and it's not necessarily a power vacuum, but I would say that these characters are trying to figure out exactly why their factions have been at war for so long, and in the middle of it, then they are possibly falling in love. And we'll just have to wait and see how things progress and see whether or not these characters make it together in the end. All right, guys, that is my list of the greatest books for 2024. What did you read this year? What is your top 10 list? Come on, guys, give me some comments down in the section below the video, and let's see what you enjoyed, what you loved. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hit 150 subscribers today. That made me feel so good. I love that you guys love this content, and I look forward to providing you with so much more, and higher, even higher production quality content in 2025. I'm looking forward to getting a room set up, like I said, in our new house, that I can record these videos. My wife actually got me a tripod with a light so that I can use my, have a little bit of light when I shoot these videos, give you guys more clarity, and just keep pushing this channel forward. So thanks again. Like I said, let me know what you read this year. What were your 10 top favorite books? Do you have any honorable mentions? Did you read 1 or 2 books in the year and that's all you read? Let's talk about it in the comments below, and we'll catch you guys next time. By the way, I'm probably not going to see you before then. So if I don't, then have a happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everybody. I hope that you have a safe and happy holiday, and we will see you on the other side.